Angular. So I think you know that Angular is the open source front end framework. It provided the all tools and features so for the front end development. Okay, so we can easily develop a sophisticated view. We can develop on the basis of Angular. We can use each and everything. We can use CSS, we can use HTML, we can use uh, image, audio, video. We can use anything to develop a attractive views, a attractive front end. Okay, here we are using TypeScript at the place of JavaScript because TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, and we used Node.js, and Node.js contained V8 engine, and V8 engine help us to execute the JavaScript programming. And Angular compiler convert our JavaScript program into TypeScript program into JavaScript, and after that it will execute on Node.js. Okay, so Angular is a open source front end development framework developed by Google. Okay, so Angular is an application design framework and development platform for creating efficient and sophisticated single page application. Means we have not need to create multiple pages. At the place of pages, web pages, we create component here. Okay, and on the basis of this component we can form a web page. Okay, so here only index.html will execute on the, it will load on the browser, and after that if we want to execute, if we want to access any other page, so we can call a component that will load on that page. So in single page application, only one page, only one web page will load on the web browser. Another time if you call any other web page, so only that content is not present in current page. That content, that component only appear on your web page. Okay, so it is called single page application. Okay, what is Angular? So Angular just like a platform and built on TypeScript. Here we will create or we will write the program on TypeScript, and TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. After compilation, the JavaScript content converted TypeScript content converted JavaScript. Okay, so as a platform, Angular include a component-based framework. So here we use component at the place of web pages. Here only one web page will create, will load on the web browser, and this is a component based, so only that component that is not present in that page, that will load on the browser. Okay, so it is a scalable web application, means as per our need we can create any numbers of component or web pages on the basis of, we can form web pages on the basis of components. Okay, so as per our need we can create a large number of web pages, because we will form on the basis of component. Okay, and a collection of well integrated libraries that can wide variety of features including routing, form management, client server communicator, and more. I think you have remember we have already discussed about the RESTful web services and macro services. Okay, so if suppose we want to transfer any value, because macro services are web services work on the basis of the output of a service used as a input in the web services or macro services. But here for this purpose, if you want to transfer any values in through the get method, through the post method, through the put method, through the delete method, we use postman. I think you have remembered we already use postman. So through the postman we can transfer the values. But now we will transfer all values, like suppose for the get values, for the post value, for the put, for delete. We will transfer the value through the Angular. So actually we will use Angular at the place of postman. Okay. So at the time of development of project, we will connect Angular with macro services, Angular with web services. Okay, and for this purpose we will use service. Okay, service is another module in Angular to the services, and a service method, service class contain the method of different operations. Like suppose we want to fetch the record from the database. For this purpose we will create a method in service class. We will suppose we want to insert the record in the database. For this purpose we will create another method in the service class. If you want to fetch the, if you want to modify, search, or any operation if you want to perform on the database, so we will create a function in service class, and service class connect with macro services or web services, and that can perform the operation. So in front end we use Angular. In back end, because we are Java developers, so we use microservices or web services. Okay, so for this purpose we use client, because without server we cannot execute Angular, because it executes on the 4200 port number. It's also a client server architecture, and here we are using routing, we are using form, we are using a number of varieties of features in Angular. Okay, next thing, a suite of developer tools to help to develop, build, test, and upgrade your code. So here the Angular provides us a large of features that help to develop, build, test, and perform any operation on the basis of Angular. Angular support us. We can develop a website, a web application with MVC. Okay, so I think you have remembered we have already created this type of application in Java, like Spring MVC, like Spring Boot MVC. We use the view and model and control. I think you have remembered this. So for the view, we use Angular. Okay, so Angular help us to get the value from the front end, from the user, and it will show the output on the web browser. So with the, we will perform the all views related uh, operation through the Angular. Okay, so actually at the time of development of project, we will use we will connect Angular and macro services together. Okay, macro services we will use in the back end, and Angular we will use in front end. Okay, and I think you know that we are using Angular for 4200 port number, and all macro services are executing on different port number. Okay, so through this port number we will call all you actually in service class we will call that URL. Okay, suppose we have a macro service that is a through that macro service we want to insert the value in the database or fetch the value from the database from port number is 8084, suppose. So we will use that URL in Angular service class. Okay, and we will call that we can call that macro services through that URL. So actually On the basis of URL, we will connect with uh, Angular with microservices. Okay, at the time of project development. Currently, we are working on front end. Okay, after that, here component. So I think you know that components means we can create a component, and component, suppose we can divide a complete web page in a multiple component, multiple parts, like we can divide in we can multiple part, like header part, and navbar part, menu part, body part, a slider part, footer part. We can divide a complete page in multiple parts. Okay, so components, you can say a part of web pages, just like. Okay, so here you can say components are fundamental building block for creating application. In component consist of, so actually, so each component contain one part of a web page. Okay, so we can create a header component, we can create a navbar component, we can create a menu component, we can create a slider component, we can create a body component, we can create a footer component. So a we can say a web page is a collection of components. Okay, and each component, suppose we want to create a component in Angular, so Angular provide us a four files: one HTML file, one CSS file, and two TS file. One for testing purpose, okay, and one is a component. Actually, we'll use it as a TS file as a component. Okay, so here you can see this a HTML template that declare what render on the page. So in HTML page, we can declare which content will appear on the web browser, on the web page. Okay, so that is HTML means template. We call template in Angular. If we call a template, it means we are saying about the HTML file. Okay, so actually here we are calling template HTML file as a template. Okay, here we can declare which content we want to display on the web browser. Second thing, a TypeScript class that define behavior. Actually, you can say if you want to if you want to convert your HTML file, because HTML file only support uh, static page. Okay, it cannot support dynamic page. But if you want to perform dynamic operation, so for this purpose we use TypeScript in Angular. Okay, so through the TypeScript we can change the content of web browser or component. Suppose we want to change anything in the header part, so we use TypeScript file of header component. If we want to change anything in the content of footer, so we will use TS file or TypeScript file of footer component. Okay, so through the TypeScript we will convert, we will create a dynamic page. We can change the behavior of your component as a dynamic, so we use TypeScript. Okay, the CSS selector that define how the component is used in a template. Okay, so and optionally CSS style applied to the template. Okay, so here we have not need to use CSS like inline. Okay, because Angular provided a separate class, a CSS file for each component. Means header component has a separate CSS file, footer component has a separate CSS file, your all components has a separate CSS file. We have not to declare all CSS in a single file. Okay, so for each component we have a separate CSS file, we can use it. Otherwise we have bootstrap. If we have not need to specify, CSS, that is not mandatory. At the place of this, we can use a bootstrap, and we can easily use each and everything we can design in, we can apply in HTML page or template. Here we are calling template means HTML file. Okay, if you are calling component means you are saying about TS file. TS file means component, and but the component have fork file. But actually, if we are saying about the component means we are explaining you. We are saying about the TypeScript file, TS file. Okay. Next thing, that is the example. Here you can see this. This is a component name dot component dot TS file, and this is a decorator that is called at the rate starting from the decorator. Oh, sorry for this. Okay, component, through that component decorator we declare it as a component. Okay, so this is actually, this is a TS file. Actually we called TS file as a component. Actually main thing is, so here you can see the first word is a stand alone is equal to true. Okay, 1 minute, I want to explain it separately, and that is a template. No problem, we can see actual file. Suppose this is the app, and this is a component, app component. You can see any components here. You can see this is a import, all imports are there, and add component, that's called decorators. Decorator start with, you can say annotation. Okay, you can say annotation, that is a annotation of component. So here add component. Okay, here declare selector, standalone, imports, template URL, and style URL. So here this is selector. Selector means, I think you have remember we use multiple selector in CSS like ID, class, universal. This we use, and use tag as a selector. So app root, it's work as a tag for app component. Okay, so if you want to execute app component, we use app root. It like just as a tag of HTML. Okay, stand alone true. It means this is a standalone component. It means it does not depend on any other component. It is a standalone. Okay, actually in previous version, like before the 17 version, like say 8 version, 12 version, 13, 16. So there we use ng modular, and all components in before the 17 version, these are mandatory, must be declared all components in the ng module. That is another file, that is a TS file, that app.module.ts file, and that is a mandatory, we declare the all components, all modules in app.module.ts file. But from the 17 version, we have not need to specify the all components, all modules in app.module file, because currently app.module.ts file is not exist. Okay, suppose we are using any component, like here we are using header component, and I am using header component in home. So we will import header component only in home. We have not need to import in app.component. Okay, here you can see this is app component. This is app component. Here we import navbar, header, slider component, home component, and footer component, and contact count. Which component you are using in app must be import in uh, app.ts file. We have not need to declare in app.module.ts file, and here you can see this, there is a app.module.ts file is not exist. Okay, so this is a standalone component. We have not need to declare any other pages, any other modules. Okay, after that here you can see the imports. So if you have need of any component, any module, so we can must be import here, like router, outlet, header, navbar, slider, home, footer, okay, contract, and must be import here. Okay, after that we can use it. Okay, this is title only, this is a variable, and here I have declared as a array info tag. You can declare anything. Okay, after that here you can see this, and here must be, remember this here, this is the class. Okay, if you want to create a class in JavaScript, so it is not possible, but in current version like ES6, ES7, we can create the class. Okay, here in this is TypeScript file, here we can create the class, and here we using a keyword export. It means we can use this class anywhere in this application. If we'll remove this export, so we cannot use app component anywhere in our application. So at some, suppose just like is a public, we make it as a public. If you use export, means that is a public. This component we can use in whole application anywhere. Okay, next thing, directives. So directives are defined as classes that can add new behavior to the element, template or module existing there. So if you suppose we have directives are classes, and what is the use of this? If you want to change, if you want to add a new element in your component, if you want to modify any element, so for this purpose we use different types of directives. Okay, and with the help of these directives we can actually, in say a simple word, we can change the, so in we want to change anything in the web pages, so for this purpose we use directives. We can add anything, we can modify anything, we can delete anything, we can remove anything through these directives. Okay. Types of directives. There are three types of directives: component directives, structure directives, and attribute directives. We are already used this, okay, but I want to explain you component directive, structure directive, and attribute directive. We have already used it. Okay, so there are three types of directives: component directives, structure directives, and attributes directives. Okay, after that, component directives. I think that that's a component is all add component, that's called directives. Okay, we already use in at the time of creation of a component. In TS file we use add component, that is a component directive. Okay, so the special directive in Angular are called component, since this type of directive has a template or template URL. In effect, it is a component directive that shows something into. So to this component we can add, we can modify any content in current HTML page or component of any page. Like suppose we create a HTML file through the in data binding, I think you know that we can handle the content of HTML through the TS file. Okay, so which content we want to show on the HTML, we can direct through the TS file. Okay, so for TS file we use add component directive. So if you want to create a component, we have need a directive name is add component. Okay, through this component we can change, we can add, we can modify, and we can declare which content will show on that component, on that template, on that HTML file. Okay. Next thing is a structure directive. A structure directive, suppose we want to change anything, we want to modify anything on the basis of a specific condition. Okay, currently uh, we can change easily. We want to change anything. We want to change the values of the any content, any variable. So we can easily transfer from the TS file. But suppose we want to change it through the on the basis of a specific condition. For this purpose, we use structural directives. Okay, here we use ng if, ng for, ng else. These are the some. Ng for is just like as a for loop. If you know Java, so I think for each loop. This is similar to ng for. This is similar to for loop, for each loop. Okay, so if you want to show a list of values, multiple values you want to access, you want to repeat anything, so for this purpose we use ng for. Ng switch is also there, and ng if and ng switch if you want to perform on the basis of a specific condition, so we use ng if or ng switch. Okay, so actually in structured directive we can use if statement. Actually just like the if statement, you can specify a condition. If condition is true, then it will that change will be performed, otherwise it will not perform. And in ng for is just like the for each loop. If you want to show a list, you want to repeat a program or any instruction, so we use ng for. Okay, attribute directive. I think we have already done this in data binding. Ng style and ng class, and for the if you want to apply any style, specific style on the HTML page, we want to access the CSS class, so for this purpose we use ng class. And if you want to access, if you want to specify any style, so for this purpose we use ng style. Decorators. Okay, so decorators are functions that are used to modify the behavior of class and their members. They provide a way to add metadata or apply transformation to code elements, and it's include like components, services, directives, pipes, modules, and more. So decorators are also used to change the behavior and behavior of the elements of your components. Okay, for this purpose we can define in different directives. In components we use services. Services are also a collection of functions. Directives, pipes, that is a pipe symbol, like I think you know that pipe symbol is already exist in your keyboard. And but in Angular we use this pipe for the transformation. Means suppose we want to convert that value in uppercase, we want to convert that value in a small case, we want to trim the values, we want to find the first word. For this purpose, so, actually these are the functions for this, like string functions. For this purpose we use pipes. And modules, you can say Angular is divided in multiple modules, like ng modules, like form module. I think you have remembered in last example data binding, two-way binding, we add a form module. Okay, same as actually form, two types of form in Angular, for a template driven form and reactive form. So if you want to perform MVC, so we use reactive form modules. So if you want to use any form like template driven form, reactive form modules, for this purpose we have need to add a reactive form, form module, form module. These are the different modules, so we can divide the whole Angular in multiple modules. Suppose we want to perform any Angular operation, so we have need of ng module. Okay, that perform here, you can see this. Actually currently we are working on 18 version, but in previous version here you can see the Angular code. So if you want to apply here at the place of component, in previous version we use ng module. Okay, and that ng module contain the all component and module. Okay, just like this. Okay, but currently we are not using ng module. Okay, so actually all modules are a you can say we can divide the whole Angular application in multiple modules like ng module, form module, reactive module, like this. Okay, so and here you can see these are the decorators like components, services, we called it. So how to declare this is a service class, how to declare this is a component, how to declare this is a directive, how to declare this is a pipe. So for this purpose we have an annotation. Actually in Java we call it as an annotation, but here we call it a directive. Like add component, that is a directive, add input is a directive, add output is a directive, add service is a directive, add component is a directive, and ng module is a directive. Okay, so through this directive, the decorator, that is, we declare the different components. Okay, here types of decorators: class decorators, property decorators, method decorators, and parameter decorators. Class decorators, you can see there: add component, add directive, add ng module. These are the decorators. That is a class based. Like suppose I think you have remember add controller. That is a class based. Add rest controller. That is a class based. Add service. That is a class based. Add component. Add repository. These are the class decorator. If we can declare only in class, we cannot declare that on methods. But add configuration is a class based, but add beam is a method based decorator. Okay, same as here. There is a multiple class decorator. Add component, add directive, add ng module, add service. These are the example of add class decorator. We can say this if you want to, suppose we want to specify that class is a controller class, so we use add controller. Same as here, if we want to declare that class is a component class, so we declare add component, add directive, add ng module, add service. Okay, but here we are calling decorators, but in Java we call it annotation. Property decorators, here you can see this property decorator applied to the class properties and commonly used to modify the property within the class. Like here, input decorators, output decorators, these are the property. If you want to change anything, modify anything in the property of a class, so we use property decorators. Okay, method decorators, if you want to change or modify any method on the basis of method, so we use method decorator. Like suppose get mapping, post mapping, put mapping, delete mapping, these are the method annotation. We cannot use it as a class, But at request mapping, actually I'm talking about the microservices and web services. Okay, where in microservices and web services we use at get mapping, at post mapping, at group mapping, at it mapping. We cannot use this method, this annotation at class level, but at request mapping we can use in both place. We can use as a class annotation and we can use as a method annotation. Okay, same as here, component, ng module, these are the class decorator, but here method decorator like post listener, these are the example of method decorator. And in at input, at output, these are the property decorator. Okay, only decorate is same as annotation. Here parameter decorator, here inject, if we want to inject the dependency in constructor, so at that time we use add inject. So that is a parameter. Suppose we have a we want to pass a value in a constructor, so for this purpose we use add inject decorator. Modules. So what is modules? So I already explained you, we can divide the whole application in multiple modules. Okay, suppose we want to perform a simple operation, so we can use ng module. Like we want to create a component and we want to perform simple operation. We want to only show the components on the web browser. So for this purpose only we use ng modules. But suppose we want to use a form module, template driven form or reactive form module. So we have need to add that module. If we want to perform routing, suppose we want to call any, if you click on any tab and you want to call that component, that web page. So for this purpose we have need to of routing. So we add router module. We will add router module. Okay. We want to create a form, then we will add different module, reactive module or template driven module. Okay, so we can divide the whole application in different module as per our need. We can add in our Angular application. Okay, component life cycle. A component, actually mostly we work on component, that is the main basic thing. We have declare anything in component. So that's just like as a part of web pages. We can divide a whole page in multiple component. So each component just like as a web page, and at the collection of these component we can form a web page, or we can also form a component. A component contain multiple component, it is possible. Suppose we are creating home page, so home component have header, footer, slider, navbar, body, menus, different component. Okay, so a component can contain the multiple component, and this component contain multiple methods, that's called life cycle methods. Okay, so suppose we want to change anything in the component, we want to delete anything in the component, we want to update anything, so a particular method will execute. So after execution of, because components are also a class, so each class have a constructor. So after execution of the constructor, this method as per our need it will execute. Okay, so here you can see this, your application can use lifecycle hooks methods to tap into key event in the lifecycle of a component, directive to initialize new instance if you want to create a new object of a class, initiate change detection when needed, respond to update during change detection, and clean up before deletion of instance. Okay, so in different operation, different method will execute. So after execution of constructor, 8 method will execute from start to end. Means after creation of method, creation of the object of a component, first of all component will execute, after that sorry, yes, component will execute, then constructor will execute and create the instance of component. After that, 8 method will be execute as per requirement. Okay, for different operations. Suppose we want to delete the all instance and clean up, and if you want to change anything, if you want to update anything, so add and in different stage execute different hooks method are life cycle methods. Okay, so here response when, so first this is a first method of life cycle on ng on changes, so all method will start with ng. Okay, I think you know that all commands of angular start with ng, same as here all methods name start with ng, all method, all 8 methods. First is the ng on changes. When you will change anything in your component, in your template, then this method will execute. Respond when angular set or reset data bound into the input property. If you want to change anything, suppose if you want to input any values, if you want to transfer any value in input tag, so at that time it will be execute. Okay, so response when angular set or reset data bound input property. So the input property, if you want to change the values of input tag, input property, so at that time, currently in normal way we call it input tag, but in angular we call it input properties. Okay, so if you want to change the value of input properties, at that time ng on changes will execute. Okay, after that ng on init. Init means initialization. Okay, so ng on init, at the time of initialization of your object of your component, this method will be executed. So initialize the directory or component after angular first display the data bound property and set the directory or component input property. So first time when it the object will create of directory or component your angular, so at that time ng on init will be executed. For initialization this method will be executed. After that ng do check. Okay, so actually you can see this detect and act upon changes that angular can't or would not detect it on its own. So actually this method, it is used to check that values angular cannot check, yeah, or angular not interested to check that values, it will not check that values, or it cannot check that values, then at that time ng do checks will execute. Okay, so after the execution of init method, then ng do check your check the your forms, your input values to the ng do checks. Okay, ng after content init. Okay, after loading the all component will load on the web browser. Okay, so for this purpose at that time ng after content init method will execute. When your all content of your component will appear, will load on the browser, then this method will execute. So here respond after angular property external content into the component view or into the view that a directory is in. Like suppose we execute app component, so all components will load in on the web browser. Suppose we want to change it, we want to apply any contact us or about us or service or any other component. So if you will upload, it will change it the content of your web browser. So at that time, so respond after angular properties external content into the component view or into the view that a directory is in. So at that time, after loading of the content of a component, this method will be executed. Okay, for initialization. After that, ng content checked. After that, it will check your content, that respond after check the content projected into the directive and component. Okay, suppose I think you know that uh, suppose we want to add a component in app component. Okay, so we can add in the component, but suppose we forget the declare import in the app component. Suppose we want to add that component in the app component, and we forget the declare in the component. So I think you will get a error on the web browser. So at that time, so if you add this, if you want to project this value, so it will check that is already exist or not. If that component exists, then it will appear, that content of that content will appear on your web browser. Okay, then here ng after view initialization, respond after angular, initialize the component view and child view are the view that contain the directive. Suppose main, first of all, app component will appear on the screen. Okay, or we want to appear contact us and any other component. So response after initialization, so after loading of any content, that will execute. So here respond after angular initialize the component views and child views. Child views means, like suppose we first of all, actually the main root is a app component. So app component is a main component, and other components are a child components of app component. Okay, so after angular initialize the component views and child views are the view that contain the directive. So after the initialization, after the loading, after the view of main components or child component, it will respond, it will execute. Okay, same thing here. Ng after view checked, after that it will respond after angular check the component view and child view or view that contain the directive. So at the time of checking of that view, this method will be executed. And at the end of this, means suppose we want to close this component, then ng on destroy will execute and it delete the object at that time created. All object it will clean from the memory, it will delete the all objects. Okay, so these are the all methods of life cycle of components. Okay, these are the you can say favorite question of your interviewer, so must be remember this. Okay, and I'm going to share this presentation on your LMS. Please check it. If you have any doubt, any queries, you can please inform me. Okay.